and welcome to the channel. So you've probably gone to your local art supply shop or online to get your watercolor paper, but you got so intimidated by all the options available. So let me walk you through all the different types of watercolor papers and what you should look for when choosing the right one for you. If there's one thing you should splurge on when it comes to watercolor supplies, it should be the paper. You can't compromise on the quality of paints and brushes. And if it's within your budget, invest in 100% cotton watercolor paper. When I first started using watercolor, I used the cheapest ones available. They're usually made of materials that are cheaper to produce. These papers can hold basic watercolor techniques, but as you progress with your skills, the paper quality could limit you. It can be frustrating because they can't hold as much water and they can buckle easily. Most of the time, it can't handle surface scratches after using an eraser for underdrawings and when peeling masking fluid and tape. Most 100% cotton paper are artist grades and archival. Unlike other papers that are machine-made, these papers are handmade or mold-made. As a result, you'll find the dents on the surface look more natural. When I switched to cotton paper, I had to relearn the techniques I thought I already knew. It absorbs the water and the pigment beautifully. It can handle scratching, scrubbing, lifting, and lots of water. You can make student-grade watercolors work with this kind of paper. I even tested my toddler's paint on these papers. These kinds of paints usually tend to look chalky and opaque. With 100% cotton paper, the colors still look blended. Quality paper is definitely much more expensive, and it's not fun to bleed for your art. If you're a beginner and doesn't want to splurge on supplies yet, I suggest you can start with brands like Canson, Fabriano, and Cotman. These are all student grade, but you can already produce a decent work with these. I also don't mind using the cheapest ones for sketching, composition, and color studies. Artist is the most popular artist grade watercolor paper, but it's incredibly expensive. In my experience, brands like Saunders, Watson Muse, and Strathmore can perform really well too. Now here comes the confusing part. Most watercolor papers are labeled with cold pressed or hot pressed on their packaging. The name literally means the method on how these papers were pressed. These methods make the papers different. Cold pressed paper is the most common because it's an all-purpose paper. You can use it for loose, expressive paintings, and it can also handle detailed rendering. It tends to absorb water and pigment faster than hot pressed. So when you apply paint on its surface, it looks like it's staining the paper rather than floating on the surface. Hot pressed paper is usually used for highly detailed paintings or illustrations. It's very popular among botanical illustrators. The water and the pigment tend to float on top and doesn't sink in the paper immediately. Pigments appear to be more granular because of that. The key in building layers with this kind of paper is to use just a little amount of water. Here I painted the same subject on these papers and tried to use the same techniques. You'll also find papers that are labeled smooth, medium, or rough. Smooth paper is great for mixed media, especially if you're doing a line and wash style. Pens glide smoothly on this surface. Medium can be used for any style, it's very easy to work with. Rough is for very loose and expressive style, and if you intend to really show the texture of your paper, then this one's for you. This is what you'll consider when it comes to the style of painting you would like to achieve. This will all come down to personal preference. I like to mix both expressive watercolor effects and detailed rendering with my paintings. So I go for cold pressed paper, and if there are texture variations on a particular brand, I'll go for medium. It comes in different forms. The most common are sketchbooks, pads, and loose sheets. If you're a beginner, it's ideal to get trial sheet packs like this, so you won't waste a lot of paper if you end up not liking it. Once you get comfortable with a particular paper, get them in bigger sizes or rolls and divide and cut them to smaller pieces. This is the most economical way of purchasing watercolor paper. Try to get the most out of your paper, and depending on the quality, both sides can actually be used. I usually use the back side to make color swatches and check how the paper would react to water. You'll usually find GSM on paper labels, and that's the weight indicator or the thickness of the paper. These are the most common paper weights. The thicker paper can hold more water, and the thinner ones tend to buckle. They're also more expensive. If you don't mind the buckling, then that shouldn't be a problem. Leave a comment here if you have any questions about watercolor papers. I'll do my best to help you out. And if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to get notified of my future videos. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again soon.